I love books. They're like food to me. And so I guess I would say rather than having any particular writer or book influence me, it's just the whole concept of books and the fact that they're in the world. Although I will say that my favorite book when I was young was Little Women, which I read and reread and reread, especially the death scene, because I thought it was so fabulous and melodramatic that it would... Well, I'm not saying who died, all right? So it opens, right? I still have my copy. It opens right to the death scene. And then later, many, many years later, after having always said, oh, this was the book of my childhood, it made me want to be a writer. And then I reread it and I thought, oh my God, this is the sappiest book I have ever read. It set up all these horrible guilt feelings in me about family and all this sort of stuff. So, you know, what can I say? I just love to read. I will say, probably of my contemporaries, I most admire Tim O'Brien. I think he's a brilliant writer. Most particularly the Vietnam books. They just kill me every single time.
I am also deeply influenced by bad books. I worked as a book critic for many years and at a magazine that reviewed, 400 books every 2 weeks. So I read a lot, and most of what I read was bad because I was young and I was sort of at the bottom end of the totem pole. I hope no one whose books I reviewed is here. But the great thing about a bad book is that it's like watching a puppeteer where you can see the strings, and so you can see what they're doing in a way that you can't see what Vonnegut or Toni Morrison is doing. Seeing the strings was very useful for me, and so reading a lot of sort of, for lack of a better word, bad books, was very useful. And I also find that I enjoy without guilt and without irony what are often called bad books. I like reading books where I know exactly what's going to happen. I like reading Edwardian romances. I like reading very sort of boilerplate, hard-boiled mysteries. I also like reading great mystery novels, and I love to read broadly. But the writers who influenced me the most, I guess, are the writers who made me want to be a writer. Vonnegut was my favorite writer when I was a teenager, and I always thought very, very highly of him both as a person, sort of the way that he carried himself as a writer, but also his work. And then J.D. Salinger. I think anybody who writes about smart teens is writing with a consciousness of Salinger. I think Salinger is sort of our great, was in some ways the inventor of American adolescence as well as the chronicler of it. So yeah, I definitely think Salinger is a big influence on me. But I'm also influenced very profoundly by things that have nothing to do with writing or writers, by like stories that people tell me, or jokes that my wife makes or whatever. I'll steal from anybody. I have no, I think one of the things a writer has to have is an absolute fearlessness when it comes to theft. Obviously you can't plagiarize because then you get in trouble. I think that's the only reason that plagiarism is wrong, actually. No, it's not. It's not. Obviously, there are other reasons. But I will and have. I stole from my grandmother all the time, and in ways that would anger her. But my responsibility is to the story.